if you think the basics are not taken care of, definitely the basics. I keep returning to it, but if you could look at the next fancy thing, like the shiny ball and work on that. Like, oh, this would be really cool if we would implement that. Sure. But if there's something more basic that is still broken, just take care of that first, because most probably that basic thing has a way bigger return than the other thing.
Welcome to the B2B Digital Marketer Podcast, a podcast helping you to end your struggle with digital marketing, helping you to pave a new and better path to target and capture your ideal customer. Each week, we teach you how insiders and experts debunk the dreary and become engines of innovation. Now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Okay, B2B DM gang, and I think we're going to have a really good discussion today, because we're going to talk about why does CRM fail and how to fix it, because we have Jeroen Corthout with us. Jeroen, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We've had a great discussion to prepare for this particular this episode, and because CRM, I mean, for me, it's been 20 plus, almost 30 years that I've been dealing with CRM in some form or fashion, going back to the early hardware software days where you just plug it in your computer and you had to then have different handheld devices. I mean, it goes back many ways, but I always have heard about, program failures, CRM program failures, doesn't work, this, that, and the other. And Jeroen is really taking a quite different approach. But before we get into that, Jeroen, if you could please share with people a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so my background is, I'm actually a biomedical engineer by background, which is, has nothing to do with what I do today. But I actually, when I was young, I really loved building websites. My dad was an engineer. He sort of always pushed me in that direction, I would say. And I studied biomedical engineering because I thought it was really interesting and I could do something big there. I didn't really like the engineering when I looked for jobs. Like, I want to do something really with people. I didn't want to do something with things in the background. I want to work with people. I ended up doing business school to make that shift. And I started in marketing in the healthcare sector still. So I sort of kept that connection to healthcare. In the beginning, I was working in a pharma company doing marketing. And then I understood that nobody understood digital marketing there, or sales, or any of these things. And I thought about starting a company in that direction. And then I met someone who already had a company in that direction, and I joined them. And I learned a lot of things there. I helped pharma companies become digital, life sciences companies in general, for 4 or 5 years. And did a lot of projects with digitalizing marketing, sales, CRM. And I always knew I wanted to start my own company. And I tried a few times and failed. And Salesforce actually started during one of those adventures. We had another software company. We had a good amount of leads, and I had some experience using Salesforce. That's what I used at the pharma companies usually. I knew that was really a practical tool. It was a really great thing to build a lot of things in for an enterprise, but nothing that really helped me sell. I would basically organize myself in Outlook in the day and in a task list, but definitely not in Salesforce. That's why I would sort of report to management, but I wouldn't use it for myself. And we tried lots of different tools, expecting to find something better, and we did find better things, but we found nothing that was good enough for us, in the sense that we didn't manage to use anything properly and consistently. We found that most systems required a huge amount of work. They came with this expectation that anytime we saw something new or talked to someone or so, we would say, oh, let's put this in the CRM. And we didn't do that, especially not if things were going well, then we just forgot about all that. And then, because we didn't keep track properly, we would things would start slipping through the cracks. And then we started dreaming about a system that would organize it all for us, track everything automatically based on your inbox and your calendar and your phone and email tracking and web tracking and company databases and publicly available info, email signatures. There's so many things out there that you as a salesperson end up copying manually all the time or tracking manually. We thought, what if our system just plugs into all these places and brings it together and make sure that it helps you sell instead of you helping the system to be up to date or something.
Well, as you're talking and you start talking about your origins of the pharmaceutical space and thinking about, for example, you're in Europe, the way that pharmaceutical sales actually is structured and the regulations and limitations upon it is quite different than it is here in in the States. So then I start thinking about, okay, well, if I have a system that was originally generated or created with that context in mind, how is it going to work for other organizations?
No, actually, it's more with, I worked in a consultancy or an agency, and then we had a software company, and that is more the background. Because actually pharmaceutical sales, especially in Europe, it's actually promotion. It's not really sales. You go to someone and it's like you're handing out flyers on the road or something like, hey, try this, it's really good. But you do that in a doctor's office to just visualize a little. So of course it comes with a higher pay and a lot more stature and a nice car, at least in Belgium. But it's not really sales. You're not closing deals. There are some pharmaceutical sales that are called key account management that goes to hospitals and closes the big deals with the pharmacies and whatnot. But most of but we had agency sales and software sales in mind, and actually that's the bulk of our customers right now are agencies and software companies.
Well, all right. So you mentioned before about the deep history even from my own use in regards to CRM. And, and CRM, it's kind of taken on an acronym by itself, but customer relationship management is really what we're talking about here. And that, even when I start speaking with a lot of, sales and revenue generation executives, I mean, we have roundtables and we meet every, couple of weeks and I hear them talk about their strategy associated with, how they're leveraging this information, how they're trying to generate sales. And sometimes I cringe. Because for example, if we start talking about CRM, you even talked about leakage, you talked about, how do I make sure that, people are, or I have access to particular accounts based on where they are, is they lump everybody into one big bucket. And that just doesn't work. I mean, because not everybody should be treated the same. If I've had interactions like with you for, on and off for the past couple of months, I shouldn't have you in the same bucket as someone who I've never really spoken to. It just, I see all of these types of problems happening. And I think it has to go back into the issue that we kind of talked about is why does CRM fail and how to fix it? Because a lot of people will sit there and say, well, okay, well, what is the best, or how do I choose the best CRM? So when someone asks you that question, how would you answer it?
Yeah, so in what you were describing, I would say the main issue is there is no data. So you have to lump everyone in the same bucket because you have no idea. Why is there no data? Well, that's because the data is dependent on salespeople. And if these salespeople don't feel like it makes sense to fill it out because it doesn't help them and it's a lot of work, and the manager might say, you have to fill this out, but they will just fill out the bare minimum. Just what they can get away with. And it's like that, you're never going to be able to organize things well because you just miss a lot of information. Now, but with that in mind, the goal is having salespeople use the CRM properly. Then you can start thinking, okay, how am I going to organize for that? So the first step is, what is the very practical goal you're trying to achieve with your CRM? There might be many. I mean, a CRM helps with many things if it works. But what is the most pragmatic way of looking at it? And for instance, if you're a B2B company, in most companies, it's going to be about better following up leads. If you're an e-commerce company, it's probably about generating repeat revenue. If you're a real estate company, it's about matching the right assets, houses, and stuff to people. But let's keep B2B in mind. It's about following up leads. Then you need to find a system that is going to help you in the best possible way. Then you already know within this huge space. You said 1,500. I don't know it's that many. On G2, it's like 750. I can imagine there's many that are not on G2.com. So, but within that space, you look for the ones that are going to help you follow up leads. You do your research. You look through different systems with that in mind. And then, because you want your sales team to use it, you involve your sales team. So you have a little short list, and then you say, guys, which CRMs do you see yourself using? And instead of just having them look at the site, invite them all on a trial, make them try it, see whether they actually feel themselves using it. If they say yes, one, you're more certain that it's a good choice. Second, you have their buy-in. If you just find a system and impose it on them, it's pretty much the opposite. You're not going to get as much buy-in, and you're not sure whether it's the right system. And then three, make sure that they are not just trained on how to use it. That's already good in terms of like, this is what the CRM does, and this is how you can use it to the fullest extent. That is great. A lot of people just jump in and do stuff and never really take the time to see, what is all this? But then even a little further and quite essential is if you're using it as a team, to decide how you're going to use it as a team, because you can use it in many ways. A few examples, you might have stages in your sales pipeline, like the way your sales process is structured. The stages might mean different things to different people. And then if one salesperson thinks, oh, this is what this means, and I put it there, and the other person thinks that, not only does that give a wrong idea when you look at things top down overall, it also creates wrong forecasts. It's a wrong way of communicating and collaborating, and that extends to what you fill out in fields. If you create custom fields, what does it mean when you put that in the field, to put that in the field? Are you going to use that feature to follow up on or not? How as a team are you going to approach things? If you just take that amount of time, decide it together, document it somewhere, then at least you're going to be working together as a team much more effectively, because everyone has sort of that direction in mind and knows if a certain thing is like that, it means that, which then opens up the door to better communication, better collaboration, better data in general, better reports. It has so many advantages. So it's just 3 simple steps, basically. But if you go through them, you're probably more successful than 99% of other companies.
Well, as you're talking, I start thinking about a couple of different factors. I mean, that really go outside of the whole technology capability components. I mean, you're talking about behavior change. You're talking about, consistency. You're talking about maybe even some compliance, aspects, where I have to, essentially make sure that people are actually doing the process the way that it's supposed to be done. Once we've agreed that we're going to move forward on this path, and those things can take a while. So somebody may be sitting there also and say, well, we're kind of in a position where we're in between based on our size of our organization, or maybe even the business unit I'm in. And then, maybe, they're asking themselves the question, should I use a free CRM? So if I'm sitting there and I'm looking at all these different solutions and I don't know which path to go, I mean, how do you address, looking at it from that issue, just say, hey, maybe we'll dabble in it.
Yeah.
Let's try a free CRM and then see what happens.
I think intending to dabble is probably not a great idea. Either you need a system and you get one, or you don't. And it's the steps I just explained. Keep them simple, right? Don't go crazy. Just have some simple discussions, simple looking at things, but just make sure you do these things. And then when you make a choice, the price definitely plays a role, I would say. And if it's free, well, that's great. But I would say take that as a secondary criteria. First, look at whether it's actually going to be used and whether it's going to bring you return, because CRMs are not expensive. The pricing really, compared to what the software actually does, you can get started for a very, very minimal investment. It's SaaS software, so you just pay when you use. I would say the return, if it really works, is going to be way bigger, orders of magnitudes than the price. To give you an idea, for instance, I know of a customer of ours who has 3 users on our lowest plan. So imagine that's 100 a month. And for 100 a month, they sell 1 million more a year. That's what they told me. So it's a very big difference there. And if the only thing you're looking at is the whether it's free or not, then you might be missing out on that return.
But as you're talking, I'm starting to look and think about a lot of these larger platforms which have a freemium model, and then as you start using it in order to get additional features, that's when you start getting into the pay component. Mm-hmm. So if I'm saying and sitting here looking at, well, I have to get people to change their behavior, and I have to implement this from a process perspective and look at it from an operational perspective, is, why wouldn't I take the little jumps of being free and figuring that stuff out, and then, moving into, a paid model once we've gotten essentially our feet wet and we've gotten familiar with using it?
Yeah. So I understand the way of looking at things, but then still, it's whether it starts with free, it can be nice, but is it actually going to be the CRM that your people want to use is much more important than whether it's free or not. Plus, the freemium model, it is paid in some way. If you look at, I think I have the software in mind that you have in mind. These guys charge their customers actually 10 times more than we do. Even though it starts with free, in the end, you will be paying a lot of money for the functionality you actually want. And in the beginning, that also starts like already expensive, but okay, doable. But as you grow, it becomes very expensive.
Well, I guess that's how they can actually lay out and do the freemium model on the front end, is on that they get it on the back end. Well, that makes sense. Well, and as you're thinking about the decision and to even switch, so maybe I've been subscribing, I guess the best way to say it, to a particular CRM for a while, and therefore we're not getting the success, from it. Is it really a tool problem? Or, because you talk about people wanting to use it, is it a tool problem or is it a process problem? It's
both a tool problem and a process/people problem. But I must say, when I did customer research at the very beginning, 8 years ago when we started this company, everybody was convinced that it was purely a people problem because the software was never going to get better. And there is a certain truth to that. Part of it is a people problem, but a big part of it is also software. If you have software that doesn't help you, that is an issue as well. But the two have to come together. So you need to have something that you actually want to use that actually helps you, and then you also need to do your best to use it in in a conscious way, in a way that you also discuss with your team, so you can make the best of it as well. So, what are some of the key things when you start looking at people wanting to use it? Because you've said it a couple of times, but for me, I'm like, okay, everything from using, all of these kind of tools. I remember when I used to get my CRM in a box.
and had to plug it in my computer, to now it being, cloud-based systems. And I've tried a couple, and I still keep coming back to, certain solutions that I'm comfortable with, whether it's a bias from an age perspective, meaning I've used it the most, or something else. I'm just not sure. But when you in your mind and talking about your research and where you've gone now, is if I was sitting here and I'm saying, okay, I'm getting ready to make an investment that could be significant to my organization, and I want to reduce the risk as much as I possibly can. Either we need to make a switch, or we need to, put in something that's new. How can I really differentiate, meaning this whole concept of one that people want to use? Because otherwise it seems like it's a little bit ambiguous.
You're wondering how you can make sure they're going to use it, or?
Yeah. I mean, because if we talk about a tool where it's like, okay, this is one that they will use because it has, this as a differentiation.
Oh, okay. That way. I think the main issues are how much work is it to keep it up to date? If it's a lot of work, then it's never going to happen. Things have become better lately. Many CRMs have been moving in that perspective, but they all claim on their site that they reduce a lot of manual data entry. But really try the system. See how much data entry it is to not just get a customer in the system, but also do all the tracking that is required afterwards, and whether you're going to be able to keep up with that. That is one important criteria. Second, how easy is it to understand? That's important for, especially in the beginning, when people get into it and they need to learn it. You'll always have new people on your team. So if you want to have a quick onboarding, a quick learning curve, now that is very important. But then the next level is how easy is it to navigate? If people don't find their way around it, or it just takes a lot of clicks, it will also not happen. Then third, I grouped the two 2 points in one. The third point is how much of their time does it save? And it's not just about the first point about the data input. That is important, that it's easy to keep up to date, but also does it have functionality that makes the life of a salesperson easier? Just there's a lot of routine things you're often doing in a day, like emailing people with the same email, following up, tracking whether they do a certain thing, getting some information from here to there. I don't know, many different things. Does it help them? Is it actually saving them time? Because then they can spend more time with their customers. And then I would say fourth, does it work well together with the software you have? If it does, huge boon for productivity again. If it doesn't, and you have disparate systems, non-connected, it's going to be harder again. And then 5 maybe, is it available in all the places that you'd expect, on all the devices? If your team is always at the computer, then you only have to look at that. But if they are sometimes also using their phone or so, check how the mobile phone app works. If it works nicely, they're more likely to use it anywhere, anytime, and it will be more of a part of their flow, something they can rely on. If not, then that might be an issue.
Well, I think, and I think you kind of talked about this a little bit, and I think it's important that we go back to it, is why are we doing, and needing all of these tools and these operations and this adoption and, buy-in, whatever we want to call it. It's really in order to impact those sales numbers that you talked about. You mentioned something about 3 people and generating $1 million in sales is, how can a CRM system increase my sales?
Yeah. So the biggest place where you can gain is proper follow-up. We're talking about B2B sales again, right? But it's very hard if you have a slightly larger pipeline to follow up everyone at this time they expect in a timely manner on a personal level, knowing exactly what is the next step with these people here, what are the bottlenecks and all that, in a way that they feel like they are basically the only prospect you're dealing with. They feel very valued instead of a number. That is hard without software. Well, you could organize yourself maybe on a piece of paper if that works for you, but that's also hard. That's where software really comes in, and that's where you'll find the biggest gain and where you'll increase your revenue. But then there's lots of secondary levels after that, of course. There's you can, like, sales managers actually see what their salespeople are doing beyond asking them or sitting on calls or something, so they can coach better. They have a better grasp of metrics, so they see where things are going wrong, where they need to change the processes maybe a little to do better. The marketing and sales can work together more effectively because marketing actually knows that sales is talking to a specific customer and they're in that stage, and they don't send them a coupon at the wrong moment or so. The finance department knows what sort of revenues is expected to come in because it's properly in the CRM, so they can do better cash flow planning, and they can save money there perhaps by not taking a specific loan or whatnot. So there's many secondary benefits to it, but the primary benefit is just better follow-up. There's a ton of revenue lost in bad follow-up.
Well, I mean, as you're talking, and I'm seeing more and more people, or I should say organizations, starting to put in place revenue operations. And as you started talking about this, connection of sales and marketing, when you started talking about the flow and the customer experience and or journey within it, I started thinking, well, really what we're talking about is taking CRM from just merely a relationship management tool and expanding it to revenue operational capabilities. I mean, is that right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, it can only do that if it's used again. Otherwise, you'll never get there. I think also a CRM, people think about it as a database. It's not a database. It's not an Excel sheet. It's a thing that through which you sell. You see your communication in there. You can act on it. It tracks everything. It connects with your communication tools like your inbox and your LinkedIn, perhaps, and it just makes sure that you can sell with it. It's a sales tool. It's a sales platform now more than it is a database or a worksheet or whatever.
Well, then the other thing we're hearing a lot about is, people talk about, and I think you've even kind of said it there, sales enablement, right?
Yeah.
It enables, my organization to do a better job at selling. And so we can sit here and say, yes, the whole usage and application and buy-in and all those things are critically important. But if I start thinking about the conversations that you're hearing more and more people talk about, is it that, more there's sales enablement, that they're talking about? Is it revenue operations that they're talking about? Or is it pretty basic and they're just saying, hey, we want to have and make sure that we don't have any, like, for example, funnel leakage?
Yeah.
What are the things that they're talking the most about?
I would say when people ask us stuff, it's often more about the sales enablement and the sales engagement functionality. When I do customer interviews, though, and I ask people, why is it that you're using Salesforce? What's the most essential benefit you get from it? Then it's more about the leakage. It's really about following up better. It's just the one thing is sexy, and the other thing is basic and actually even more important. It's more essential.
Yeah, well, okay. So to me, that's kind of goes back to what I was referring to before, where if all of your potential relationships are in one particular funnel, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
So if I start, thinking about a maturation process, and I start thinking about a return on investment, really, if when you look at organizations that are really doing it well in regards to implementing a CRM system, they've improved their sales enablement, they're doing better alignment, and they're having revenue operation type of activities take place because marketing is involved and things like that. What kind of timeline are we talking about?
Implementing a CRM can be done in days, involving the team, maybe weeks. You want to just go through some discussions about processes to get them right. Of course, it's an ongoing process, but the initial part, weeks, I'd say. If you're talking about setting up RevOps and all that, revenue operations, it's a more longer term thing. But you need to start with the very basics and then grow from there. I must tell you, most people they set up the CRM and that's where they stop. So that's a matter of days. There aren't many people who really take things seriously. That's maybe less than a percentage of companies or so. But if you really focus on that, you can make a huge difference for your company.
Well, to me, one of the things that I've tried to become more aware of is, and I think you kind of hit on this a little bit as well. It's kind of like you doing the bare minimum, versus doing what allows for differentiation and to be exceptional. I mean, it's not a massive gap, I don't think. I think a lot of companies kind of just stop short at the bare minimum, where if they just maybe gave 10 to 15% more effort and looked more holistically and looked at, like you said, taking CRM and looking at it more for revenue ops and sales enablement, that the gains and the impacts have 10x factors to them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's even in the end, it will be less effort, I believe. So your initial effort is maybe slightly larger, but it's really not that much larger. Like you said, maybe 20% more effort, but it's really nothing to be afraid about. At least if you approach things in a pragmatic way and you don't overcomplicate things. If you keep it simple, then it's going to save you so much effort in the long run. It's going to make you so much more successful. If anyone is listening to this and thinks, oh, we should maybe do a little effort, put it on your to-do list now, and it's maybe something to start on next week.
Okay, so if I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, we need to impact sales. I mean, a lot of organizations are looking at a lot of the things that have now become, let's just say, outdated and are not producing like they used to in the past. We have a whole lot of changes that have taken place, even with, for example, people within organizations that are part of that are part of the decision-making group or even buying committees. They're now dispersed. They're in different positions. They're with different organizations. There's a whole lot of these shifts and changes that have gone on. I'm sitting here and thinking, what should I do first, right? I'm a B2B DM marketer and salesperson. I have all these, variables that are now present to me. How would you say this is what I need to do first or focus on most?
That very much depends on what's burning in your company most. But if you think the basics are not taken care of, definitely the basics. I keep returning to it, but if you could look at the next fancy thing, like the shiny ball and work on that. Like, this would be really cool if we would implement that. Sure. But if there's something more basic that is still broken, just take care of that first, because most probably that basic thing has a way bigger return than the other thing.
That's a good point. Jeroen Corthout. Now, how does the B2B DM gang get in touch with you to maybe further this conversation about CRM?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about SalesFlare, our CRM, it's salesflare.com, FLARE. You can try the software there, see more about it and all that. And if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is the best place. There's only one person with my name, so if you see my name somewhere, just type that into LinkedIn. You'll find me. Send me a connection request with a personal message, please, because otherwise I will have to assume it's spam. I won't know where it's coming from. But if you send a personal message, I'll certainly return the connection request. I will accept it, and we can have a chat.
And just for those of you who are not familiar, Jeroen is Jeroen. Jeroen, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Yep, this was fun for me as well.
Thank you for joining us. Go now to join the B2B DM gang in the B2B Marketer LinkedIn group, where you can connect with other B2B DM disruptors and get access to our B2B DM cheat sheets, checklist, and guides. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, please help by going to iTunes to rate, review, and subscribe. And share the show on all of your digital platforms. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. And always remember, you can automate your lead capture, but you must lure your lead.